Welcome in. You had a great weekend. You know what week it is? It's the week before game week, which is actually game week. Week 0 in college football, right? It's week 0, which is super weird because it's actually week 1, right? It's like pre-boarding a plane. You want to get on a plane before you board a plane? How does that all work? Not really sure. Doesn't really matter. This is a game week. This is, I think it's going to be a really good show, by the way. We'll talk some Caitlin Clark. Holly Rowe will join us here in about 25 minutes, get you ready for the college football season. And boy, there is one name as a rookie starting quarterback that everybody's just trying to convince us is better than the rest. I'll tell you why I need some convincing coming up next. But let's start with this. Speaking of quarterbacks, a couple years ago, Brian Flores was fired by the Miami Dolphins. And it was during a time in which there were other minority candidates for head coaching jobs in the NFL. And there were a paucity of black head coaches. And many people said that Flores being fired, and by the way, Flores being told by Bill Belichick, who was getting the Giants job before he ever interviewed for the Giants job, was seen as some sort of racism. And at the time, I tried to inform people how comical and ludicrous those assertions were, mostly because if you knew who he was working for in Miami, his entire front office is black. And if you read the reports and talked to people and understood that he came from the Belichick tree, you knew how all this thing was kind of sort of going down. Then you're like, okay, well, why didn't he get a shot with the New York Giants? They already picked the white coach. They brought him in. No, that's not how it works. And this is where I can give, although it's only the last 3 months, I can give you the reality of how it works in coaching. The reality is that when Wyoming came open, everyone and their brother, myself included, knew that Sundance Wicks, who preceded me at Green Bay, would be the next head coach there. So it didn't matter who they interviewed and who they talked to. Sundance is from Wyoming, came on the staff, and had been a head coach previous to Green Bay and was a head coach at Green Bay and turned them from 4 wins to 18 wins. It was an absolute no-brainer, right? And if you look at the New York Giants, John Mara is really close with Bill Belichick. Bill Belichick didn't tell him not to interview for the job. He just told him who was ultimately going to get the job. Why? Because the Bills were the offense, and the change in Josh Allen was so apparent that you wanted that offensive coordinator to be your guy. Right? You want to draft a new quarterback. You had to have a new system. The quarterback whisperer, that's who you're going to pick, as opposed to Brian Flores, who had major trouble, a new offensive coordinator every year, couldn't get along with offensive coordinators, apparently couldn't get along with the front office. And then he clearly did not think that Tua Tagovailoa was good enough. But because Brian Flores sued the league for discrimination, and because Brian Flores hasn't gotten a job since, despite the fact he was an outstanding defensive coordinator, going back to his short time with the New England Patriots, there was this overall sense of, well, he got fired because of racism. Tua Tagovailoa is Hawaiian. He's of Polynesian descent. Okay? And I only tell you that because you know that, but remember, you have an all-black front office. You have a Polynesian quarterback who was selected number 4 in the draft. Some people believe that the Miami Dolphins wanted to lose games to make sure that they got Tua Tagovailoa. And oh yeah, by the way, Brian Flores has echoed that. I think everybody knew that to be the case. But if you want to know why he lost the job, take a listen to Tua and what he said to Dan Le Batard. Remember what he said. And again, I do believe that he was just going and ranting, but he said, a terrible person. That's how he described Brian Flores. And that he killed his confidence. And look, when you're coaching confidence is actually job number 1. It's a really hard thing. And players today are different than players of if you're in your 40s or older, our era, right? The old break them down, build them back up. But in professional sports, it's almost unheard of, with the exception of the Patriots. And therein lies the problem with so many former Patriots assistants, right? So many of them, where they walk in and they carry themselves as if they're Bill Belichick. As if they're Bill Belichick. Not understanding that Bill Belichick had earned that respect over 20 plus years of success and had just the right player in a Tom Brady to coach in just the right way. He was toughest on Tom Brady, but Tom Brady could take it. Okay. And oh yeah, by the way, Tom Brady was always already accomplished. So too was Bill Belichick. So many of these guys have gone down and done their Belichick impression, and it doesn't work. Then you factor in that you have a completely different generation of player, and you have a really smart player in a Tua who, when you're smart, you can also be sensitive to where you listen to guys. When a guy says you suck, they turn and go, really? Whereas hardcore dudes say, you suck, and they say, I'm going to prove to you don't know what you're talking about. You have to know the mentality of each player, the confidence level of each player. Right? I'll give you an example. When I played in college, my backcourt mate was a guy named Joe Atkins. Okay? You could tell Joe whatever you wanted. You could take him out. You could yell at him. You could tell him he didn't know what a good shot was. When Joe got back in the game and he felt any sort of light, that ball was going up. He had unmistakable, undeniable self-confidence. I did not. Did not. And, if you go back and you watch my college, I'm like, why didn't you shoot when you're wide open? Because I was scared to get taken out of the game. And you can't ultimately succeed that way. But in the short term, you try and be a pleaser. You try and please your coach. Tua, he's smart dude. He starts questioning himself. Maybe I do suck. Maybe I'm not good enough. Maybe I should have imposter syndrome. The point is that your ability to maintain the respect of your quarterback, to get the best out of him, to coach him hard but fair, that is usually what determines your success in the National Football League. And for anyone who said Brian Flores was fired or hasn't gotten any of these jobs because of the color of his skin, that simply means they haven't called Miami, because this is what they have told everybody without saying it on camera. None of their front office has killed Brian Flores. And Tua only did because of the juxtaposition of Mike McDaniel now with how he was coached previously and what works for him. But there's so much here in that story, right? It's the truth about Flores. It's why those Belichick guys haven't succeeded. It's why Mike McDaniels is succeeding. It's the new age of player and how they have to be coached. And it's confidence, which is just as important as conditioning and as culture. Those are the three big C's if you want to win in sports. If you destroy somebody's confidence, you're destroying their game. And the break them down, build them back up, that era is gone. It takes a really special kid, a really special person to accept that level of criticism. And you don't have the time to build them back up like you used to back when kids would go to college for 4 and 5 years. But good for Tua. Tough for Flores. Good luck getting a head coaching job now when you were called a terrible person by Tua Tagovailoa.